So lovely crochet, but with a kind of a morphic resonance overtone, one might say. When we're looking at cymatics, little did we know our grandmothers were doing cymatics. So anyway, that was a little side note off the beaten path. So, and a little bit funny, I think.
Pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah, no, they're really cool. And,
I never thought about that.
Yeah. Me neither. So, what else is coming? This is bubbling around a bit on this stuff here. The plasma, this plasma thing caught me the other day, and what's going on with
yeah,
this.
those speckles. I was trying to show you the picture of the plasma tube and compared to the dendera. I had that shot because there's those same speckles at the end of the tube. Are those called anything, or is that?
I still have to find out more. I'm just there's a certain fascination with this one, of course. So.
Right.
Welcome to the October 23rd edition of The Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have Robert, Jim, Edwin, Heather, Buddy, and David. We will be talking about plasma pitches and focuses and their apparent transmutation effects on Breccia pipes, and the rituals plasma inspired. Please like and subscribe.
That is
what is happening here,
Right.
I mean, it's it goes glow mode. Perhaps this is a way of looking at it, but in and out of glow mode. So you've got perhaps, right, but you've got these focused voltages or voltage differences here, maybe. So, and just and then the definition of things harmonically, the spacing is fairly, it's showing the shapeness to it. So anyway, these would be really fun to try to replicate. See what's going on. It's so organic. It's so organic looking. That's probably the intrigue on it. Some more of it. And Jim, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did. That thing that we were going back and forth with the Z pinch, talking with Neil, who we hope is feeling better. So, is better. We hope he makes it, and then we get this whole story. But what was your feel on that? With can you go into some just a little overview of what you're seeing there?
Oh, in here you mean?
No, with the Z pinch. I'll go back. I'll go out off this one. This was just a point of interest. So.
Yeah, well, just
put some of the text here, I think, maybe.
Just that it hasn't been modeled correctly, even in the EU. Obviously the mainstream doesn't have it right, but even in EU, there's an idea that it's caused by magnetic constriction, and that's not right at all. And wherever we see pinches, there's always going to be current passing through a layer where charge is free to flow, and then it's the radial electric field of the filament that draws charge in or out there, and you can see this in those pipes. You can see it in the local chimney where it pinches when it crosses through the galaxy. You can see it in the flame nebula, except that you have to look at not just pictures of the flame nebula. You have to read on where that is right at the edge of a molecular gas cloud. In other words, where they see a surface of charged material. So that's the part that's missing in this whole pinch thing. They don't occur just at random along the length, and that's what you would get from all the pictures. It's so that's something that still has to be modeled correctly.
Right.
I mean, you see it at the sun's surface too. We have this idea that a Birkeland current flows down right through a sunspot, and there's all kinds of evidence that that's what's happening. But then the pinch happens right at the solar surface where there is that double layer of charge. That's where it's that interaction that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
because a current filament on its own, and you see this like when you see in space, current filaments flowing for long distances, staying exactly the same width, spiraling at the same rate. And in the mainstream like laser optics experiments, it's the same thing. Like a filament on its own is even fixes itself after if you try to like block part of it, it goes right back to the same dynamics, same wavelength, everything as before. Okay, I'm talking too much.
No, it's great. No, please, it's great. This model, right?
Actually, you're not talking too much, and I'm still struggling to understand. If I hear you correctly, you need some kind of material to cause a C-pinch. There's
right.
Some kind of interaction there.
See, what's missing in all these pictures, like the ones we're looking at right there, is they don't show what's around where it pinches. It's
around here.
You would get the idea that like why is it narrowest where it is narrowest, and in actual observations you can find that there's a sheet of material going right through that part. It's not shown in this diagram. And it looks like here, it's the magnetic field pulling in, but there's no mechanism. It's kind of like pulling the wool over your eyes in a way. They show a magnetic field wrapped around, which we already know is wrong because the Bessel function magnetic field should be wrapped in one direction, maybe at another radius wrapped in the other direction. It could be actually up and down. So even that picture of the way the magnetic field is drawn is wrong. But even if it were right, that still doesn't explain why it should draw things in. They're just drawing lines in, but it doesn't show why that should happen.
Right. I mean, the model, from working with your model, et cetera, going into the conference last year, the one that was ringing for me, just as far as remapping models, because I'm one to like 52 card pickup. I like doing that. And it's disruptive, of course, but like aligning with your model, it's like this. The way that it rings for me is if the solar system is on the quote unquote Birkeland current, right? The sun itself is the Z pinch, and then you have this planar, the planar distribution of planets in the disk. So I don't know if that resonates with you or not.
Would it have anything to do with like the twisted pairs, like just turning more in on themselves, and that would just like squeeze them in effect?
Well, that still gives you, that's a picture that you see, but then the question you have to ask is why at that particular point where you see like a twisted pair coming in and spiraling around each other closely and then moving out, why at that particular point, why do they run along as pairs and then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, just twist together right there? See that there's something missing. Like why once it is brought together, why should it leave again in that picture? It's not. It's a sleight of hand. It seems to imply a mechanism, but there's no. They're just drawing in what they thought of the. They know that things pinch like that. They know that filaments do draw in and then separate. And they had this idea that was wrong, that the magnetic field is wrapped around it. And then they just draw in those magnetic fields around the individual filaments, and then they show them merging. But first of all, those magnetic fields are wrong, according to what we know of the Bessel function. But even if they were right, it's still not showing you why. Right, it doesn't explain anything. It's like, in other words, that could be the resultant field if the magnetic field really wrapped around in one direction.
Right.
But that doesn't.
It seems to me to make
the
full circle on, just as far as methodology goes. It's kind of like, okay, they're observing something and then they draw it, right? And this is our explanation.
Right.
But it seems to me that the other half of it is like, okay, here's our explanation. Let's do the experimental verification of it by taking our drawing and then making an experiment that is like purely representational of that drawing. Can you make it happen again? Right.
Right.
That's the full circle, And this
But
seems to not be happening here, of course. Right.
Right. And
But you would think with Sapphire and everything, they would be able to do those type of things.
Well, what you have to keep in mind, though, is since Donald Scott, it wasn't even in his first paper, it was his second paper where he tried to explain, galactic rotation curves by this radial electric field of a Birkeland current. That's where he worked out for the first time that there is a radial electric field in a Birkeland current. So there has obviously been, before he worked that out, there was nobody even asking what would a radial electric field in a Birkeland current do. But it's obvious it should draw charge in or out, but that can only happen if there's charge out there to do that. And that's what happens when a Birkeland current crosses through a pre-existing double layer. It's going to draw material in or out depending on the charge because of that radial electric field, and that's what's not even considered. So the magnetism, there is no radial magnetic field in a Birkeland current in the old model or in Don Scott's model. So there's no reason for the magnetic field to even draw things in. And if you consider that it flips direction, even if you want to say that it's like the Lorentz force, the Lorentz force should work in opposite directions than with the flipping magnetic field. In other words, that might sort things into shells, but it's not going to bring everything in towards the pinch. So it's the radial electric field of a filament that's important. That's
So what causes it?
what causes the radial electric field.
Well, what causes the Z-pinch to come into existence in your opinion?
Okay, when a current that should itself keep flowing in a nice uniform cylinder, or concentric cylinders if you want, when it crosses through a charged double layer, it induces current in that double layer. It's like what you see with a hurricane, for example, or galaxies. Like in a hurricane, if there is really a current flowing up and down through the center, it's the radial electric field of that's drawing charge across, like the cloud layers, towards or away from the center of that. That's how you get that spiral arm shape. It's basically charge flowing radially. And see, what we're not seeing in galaxies, like if you look out in space, it looks like galaxies are just sitting there out at random, but they're not. The mainstream sees that they exist in, like, for example, sheets of galaxies. So what that's saying is that galaxies are just they're occurring in this sheet that's already there that you don't see. And you know why you wouldn't see it, because if there's nothing going on, like no current through it, if, say, you had a sheet of electrons out there, we'll just keep it really simple, and a sheet of protons, you wouldn't see those directly. I mean, you can't, there's no interactions there.
Right. Nothing.
You don't have recombination. Yeah. There's no,
right.
All those things. The charges should stay. If you have a bunch of protons in one plane, they should kind of disperse uniformly. You shouldn't have interactions. So, but where it messes up is if you run a current through that, and then you start bringing all that charged material in that plane radially towards that filament. That's where you get all the dynamics, where you get the spiraling around it or radial motion inward. And that's where the magnetic field gives you you have to put both the radial electric field and the magnetic field to explain the spiral arm shape of a galaxy or of like a hurricane too.
Actually, this makes total sense, because we were talking the other day about the solar disk, if you will. The material is kind of pushed downwards and upwards until it comes into the plane where the forces kind of cancel each other out, which would be your disk of material, right? Your solar equator, if you will, the solar plane. And if you run a current through that, as you suggest, that would be a logical explanation for why the Z-pinch would occur there, right? So you need a double layer with atomic stuff, plasma, whatever, that needs to be there. And if you have a layer going through that, that's where a Birkeland going through that, that's where the Z-pinch would occur. That's what you're saying.
Right. Yep. That's exactly
Sounds kind of logical. So it's the interaction with the atoms, right?
See, and that's where, like, that first came to me when I was looking at the Flame Nebula, because there's so many images of that alone, and they show what's clearly, you can see like a twisted pair of Birkeland currents, and then all of a sudden you see where there's definitely a pinch and like this weird behavior where charge is like blowing out both sides. But what's missing in those pictures is that where that occurs is right at the edge of a molecular cloud, and in the mainstream they kind of almost don't put those two ideas together. It just happens to be that pinch just happens to be right at the boundary of a molecular cloud. But like if you go up to up a little bit.
Horse, I remember that was always the Horsehead Nebula, right there. So there's the one you're talking about. So.
Yeah, if you go to the ones that show inside that, like right on the second image on the
this one
from that one.
All right.
So you can see where all that material looks like it's being sprayed, almost shooting out the side of that pinch. But what you don't see in that image is that there's a cloud stretching from. You can almost see it at the right edge of that picture, but there's a layer of cloud that's huge compared to even this structure. It goes on well out in each direction, and it just happens to be right there. And that's what I thought. That can't be just a coincidence. There has to be a reason. And then that's where I started seeing that everywhere, is that there is that plane of charged material. And in the lab, that's one thing that you don't see, but I'll argue that it's there, even though you don't see it. Like when you have a Z-pinch in the lab, it looks like it just squeezes that, for no reason. But what people aren't realizing is that before you even have that discharge, you must have built up a potential difference between, the anode and the cathode. And what should happen then, if there is plasma in there, we should have had charged double layers forming that obviously we're not going to see because they're small scale, but those were there first before there even is the discharge. We already had those double layers, and in the lab you're not going to see those because they're really small scale. But in space, there's enough material that you can detect those double layers in other ways.
Very cool.
But again, the picture, again, that one with the local chimney, that the narrowest part of the chimney is right where that stream of ionized gas and dust comes right down through the galactic plane. But the narrowest part of the chimney, even in the mainstream description, happens to be centered exactly in the galactic plane. So that's, again, that's the idea. The pinch does not just occur anywhere. It's only right there. If I say that anymore, I'm going to feel like a preacher.
No. It's really interesting. It's really interesting.
So the principle of the Z-pinch, a crushing force towards a center, right? Like the aluminum can. Now I know you may have some problems with that example, but the crushing of the can. What is the crushing force? Is that the electrostatic force? That is the radial electrostatic force? You were talking about something like that.
Right. Yeah.
What crushes
it's not the magnetic? Yeah. It's the same thing where it's the radioelectric field that pulls in on the charged material there. It should actually separate charge. Like you should have some of the material being drawn inward and some of it exploding outward, depending on the sign of the charge. Obviously, if there's a radioelectric field running up and down through that, you should get charge segregation radially in that. And basically, that's what causes the pinch. Yes, it's the electric field, though. It has nothing to do with the magnetic field. The magnetic field is a result of the charge. Yes, if you're going to
right. It's
if you're going to bring the charge,
not a cause or anything.
Right, all this charge being drawn in and spiraling through that focus point, then the magnetic field is stronger there, but it's not the magnetic field, the strength of the magnetic field causing the pinch. The strength of the magnetic field is the result of the pinch. So,
well, more concentrated material increasing field strength, kind of like adding iron to a what you call it again, a transformer. More magnetic field by adding iron in the core, something to that effect. Adding mass. Interesting.
I hadn't seen this one before.
So how does this relate to the Birkeland current story in the papers of Donald Scott then, Jim? Does this fall in line, or is this a continuation of those papers?
Yeah, it's really a continuation. Like he started on his first paper was on that the magnetic field, the way it reversed direction. And he followed up a lot with the counter rotation that you should get from that. And obviously we've seen that like almost into the ground, but that's obviously right that you get counter rotation. I think we all accept that. But then his second paper showed that a Birkeland current should have a radial electric field. And the only application that's been done, at least the only application he did, is use that to explain galactic rotation curves. In other words, you can explain how fast stars are moving around the galaxy based on the way that electric field falls off. It's not an inverse square field, and that's why the mainstream's, gravity-only model doesn't work. But his electric field matches that. But that's the only real application I've seen of that radioelectric field is there. But the next question to ask is then, go ahead.
How does this relate to the sun as an anode story / sapphire setup, if you will? And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the charge or the electrons are pulled towards the sun, right? Towards the anode. Is that a result of that field, that Z-pinch field? Is that like a residual force still existing there, like a toned down Z-pinch or something? Is there any relationship to that? Why do the positive charged particles go away from the sun? They're blown away, right?
Right.
And the electrons are pulled in. Is that the same effect we're talking about here? The crushing effect, that radial, what do you call it? Electromagnetic force, whatever it was. Is that what you're talking about? Is there a relationship here or nothing at all?
Well, it's like that whole scalable thing. If you think about what should happen is, and you can trace this all the way down. Like if we have huge scale Birkeland currents in space where a galaxy forms on it, then there'll be charge flow along the arms because of that radial electric field of that large scale thing. But then the spiral arms themselves become what? Birkeland currents with a radial electric field. So that now there's another radial electric field going that way, which should do this, on and on,
it's
all
the
the way
action
down.
Scalarly, right?
Right. So you should always have these and that's where I think, who was it in the more esoteric parts that we were looking at, this right angle idea of, yes, electric field itself doesn't have a right angle component, but when charge gets moving in it and forms a Birkeland current, you produce a radial electric field. So you produce a right angle electric field to that, which produces a Birkeland current with a right angle field and so on all the way down. So you get those crazy.
In another scan, there's your the fractal nature of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And the nature of that right angle force that appears out of almost nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, but does it relate to the electron wind towards the sun and the proton wind away from the sun? Is there any relationship to this?
Well, that has to be caused by the radial electric field of the sun. So that's like the background magnetic. That's the background electric field that causes the small scale Birkeland current that flows through the sunspot. And then that has a radial electric field that causes the flow across the solar surface towards away from that the sunspot, basically.
Right. I was thinking of the sun as a whole right now, but yeah, I can see that it happens on on all those scales of magnitude, right? Very interesting. Can you talk about, maybe it's an interesting idea to bring up the Breccia pipe?
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
You brought that one up too, Jim. So there you go.
Well, that's another one where it's really clear that a pinch doesn't just happen anywhere along the length. There's special properties of that layers where we see those pinches that they happen to be at charge conducting layers, like the shale where that appears is. I don't know if I forwarded the paper on that, but there was a paper that showed that how the shale is conducting at its surface. So that's again the same picture.
This thing what's that? Just let me spell it. So let's have to find it.
It was very recent that I know.
There we go. Yeah, this one. Right.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Mighty interesting, that picture.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that whole idea especially for the idea of electrical, fusion, to know that that's an iron-rich layer that has a lot of conducting properties as known by the mainstream. Okay. Then, so you have a conducting layer and there's iron in there, and you could. I'm not claiming I can model that part of it. Could take it from there, but I mean, I'll argue that the uranium is caused by fusion of the material that was already in that plane, drawn radially inward because of the radial electric field of the current. The current that's flowing up and down through there had a radial electric field, and in other layers that aren't just conducting, it wouldn't have been able to draw charged material in. But in a conducting layer, it can bring the charged material, all those ions, whatever, to make those heavy nuclei. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, to pick up the thread a little bit there, what I can contribute here is what I've been trying to check just on the fly a little bit is the different layers. And the dark brown layer is the hermit layer, a hermit shale, or I believe it is. Right. And it's a distinct dark colored layer we saw at the EU Geology Tour. You can see it really nicely at the Grand Canyon and several other places. And that one has a high iron content, right? And I can see that the high iron being a relatively already a little bit heavy element, considering that oxygen is probably an important element that's used in geological fusion processes, at least that's the working hypothesis right now, I can totally see how that layer is capable of producing a really heavy element such as uranium. and combine that with the effect why it would pinch there, because all the iron is already there. So there's already a high abundance of heavy element, if you will. And especially an iron would be, electromagnetically interesting. And I can see why that Z-pinch electric fusion effect would happen over there, why it creates that heavy element uranium there. Definitely. Certain elements need to be there, otherwise you can't do the fusion process. That's what I can add. There you go.
What keeps ringing to me is like, because we're seeing these pretty pronounced patterns. It's like, how do you find the simplest way of demonstrating it, in the lab?
Zap the hell out of those layers in the lab, maybe?
Yeah, do a mini version of this, right? But just with the material, the appropriate materials.
So, what Jim has been teaching us today is we need to create something of a double layer in a piece of sediment, like a clay ball, and then zap a Birkeland current through it,
Mm-hmm.
Something to that effect. I'm not an experimentalist. I wouldn't know, but something to that effect.
It's that piece that like is calling our name, I think, for some reason. From spending time in the lab, it's like it's calling me back for some reason.
Well, what's his name again? The guy that does electric experiments too. A while ago, a few years ago, he Fly Fizz is a YouTube channel.
Okay, what is it?
We're familiar with him, I believe, and he shows how you can use a whole granite slab, if you will, a whole tile, a big one. And, you can use that in your experimental setup. We only need to create some layers there, if you will, some different layers, and see what happens if you bore through it with a channel of the electric discharge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something to that effect.
Granite's very interesting material. Just as far as its nature and its wide use.
Well, it seems to let the current through quite readily, right? Little resistance somehow.
Just the different textures that come through on it. This kind of stuff.
Do you have a link to that paper that Jim sent there?
Yeah, I think so.
With the Breccia Pipes, because there's an image there, a little bit down in that paper, where you see like a slice through of the Grand Canyon situation, going upwards to the northwest, if you will. And they drew in all these Breccia Pipes. And there's an interesting correlation there with major extinction events from the Perm to the Triassic, I believe it was. I sent you an email there, Jim. That's the biggest extinction event that we know of, or at least we can figure out. And that's the layer basically where those Breccia Pipes end. So there was, in my mind, at that time of that extinction event, a huge electric phenomena going on, at least in the part of the southwest of the States, but probably worldwide, considering that like 3/4 or more of the Earth species died off,
Do you have a
and higher layers do not
to
show
that, so
the Breccia Pipes,
we can share it?
meaning...
Do you have a reference to that paper so we can share it?
Jim, can you help out with that one? You found that paper.
Let's see.
The paper about the Breccia Pipes.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, if you just have if you have a name that I might be able to like.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it now. Give me a sec there. Very nice paper, actually.
Yeah, I lost it already.
I think I have it. Somebody's typing. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, check.
That's cool. But he's sending images, so they're cool. So.
It's in the chat now.
Okay. Great, thanks.
So if you go to, what was it? Page 29, is it? Yeah, 29.
Okay. Get the hand.
Almost at the bottom. That one.
Yeah.
Now, if you can make that one as large as you can.
Okay.
This is an awesome drawing. It shows the Breccia pipes basically stopping. On the right side, you see the Permian-Triassic boundary. And that's basically the big plateau in the center. That's the maximum elevation, if you will, of those Breccia pipes. And you can see it on the right. And on the top, they show how many pipes they counted. So it's what you can see. It was at that time from the Permian to the Triassic, just about there, when those discharge events, those, if they are discharge events, and in my mind they are, something to that effect, that's when they happened. And that is the biggest extinction event. So in my mind, this very much testifies or is part of the evidence that we can see this is not an asteroid or a comet that destroyed life on Earth.
Right, yeah.
And even if it was, it caused the Earth to go electrically haywire, which kills off everything, right? Because we can see these Breccia pipes. And if these are indeed these kind of plasma or discharge events, those would be pretty severe and serious. You know, these are not your normal thunderbolts. Mm-hmm. They are truly thunderbolts of the gods then.
What's the time frame again that we're seeing? This is the
so basically you're looking at, on the left is the Grand Canyon, so the Colorado River. And to the east, it goes to the northeast, is in the slice through.
Okay.
So basically you go upwards. We followed that line of traveling basically with the geology tour 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. You can see all the beautiful layers there, all the colors, white, red, reddish, yellowish, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the time frame would be, I think 1.5 billion years in total or something. Every layer is like dozens of millions of years. So many hundreds of millions of years. Mm-hmm. Going back to before the age of the dinosaurs. So at the bottom you see the carbon, the age of the Carboniferous, the carbon. Mm-hmm. And that's pre-dinosaur already, so big lizard stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And afterwards we don't see that many Breccia pipes anymore.
But they're all the way to the surface, right?
Well, until the Permian, that is, yes. So the surface at the time of the Permian-Triassic boundary, that's when that event must have happened, all those events.
Uh-huh.
Not afterwards.
Well, they're up to here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then you have this, and then along this, if we go along the other pathway where it's like, this would be like the layer where, you know, you get this high energy action, right?
That's that hermit shell that is iron rich. So if you follow a silver shaft, you know, a shaft of a mine, with a silver mine, they go down, and they can go down like 100 meters or 200 meters or 300 meters. And then comes a point, so basically they're following something like a Breccia pipe or a quartz vein or whatever. And then they hit the pitch blende, which is the uranium ore. And then they had to stop because there was no more silver. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to note, because we're not seeing that here, we're only seeing the uranium here. But in not in so much in Breccia pipes maybe, but more in silver ore veins, you see that the silver ore, when you go down, 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 you still hit that uranium position, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then the silver vein stops. It's ended.
Right.
That's the bad luck.
It's surprising to me that this isn't kind of like the standard way of thinking about it. That it's like a process, the high energy process. You know, I mean, like we're thinking about it right now. It seems not the question that comes to my mind immediately is like, why wouldn't they have thought of this before? That it was an actions like what we're talking about. That it's just like a natural deposit,
Nobody
placed.
cares about the truth, right? What they do care about, from a miner's perspective, is how can I find these Breccia pipes because they contain that uranium plug or whatever. So that's what.
But doesn't that question naturally come, where it's like, what caused this? Why is this here?
I guess the explanation of volcanoes satisfies most.
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
So up from underneath rather than right.
Well, below that, where those Breccia pipes start, below that is basically your big granite basin.
Uh-huh.
This is where the depositing layers of our Earth's history begin. Those are the layers we're looking at. Sedimentary layers, mind you.
Right. So once again, the granite.
Well, the granite seems to be the base.
Yeah.
At least they pictured it here.
Right.
God knows what was up there. That's a long time ago, you know. I mean,
well, you know,
anyway,
it's just scale. Time is an illusion.
But you know, a
more to
thick
that
sediment there. I mean, that's quite a bit of history, no matter how you turn it.
Yeah. If you make it really small, it'd be really fast. Right?
Well, maybe we can reproduce something of this in the laboratory. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. So there are probably a whole bunch of those uranium plugs to be found.
Yeah, it's a very interesting paper here, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Gump.
And you can also see the thing crumbled in itself, right? It always falls in. So all the gaseous components are boiled off. Maybe even the oxygen is released from the minerals, right? So the whole thing kind of collapses partly. It vaporizes, it ionizes, plasmifies, causing all these transmutations, for example, remineralization, escaping of the volatile stuff, and then the thing kind of slumps in on itself. That's your Breccia pipe.
Mm-hmm. So do they actively mine these?
Yes, and this article is about how great a site this mining is, because they only have to dig up acres, you know, a couple of dozen acres or something to that effect. And they were totally happy. There's no groundwater, so they only have to break the rock, release the stuff, and you've got and they're really happy because there's like almost 1% uranium oxide, so it's like high content.
Wow. Okay. Right.
So yeah, they're gonna be happy mining this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this. You know, here's signature, right? Yeah.
Well, you know, that layer, that what's it called again? That hermit shell, you know, that runs through underneath the southwest for a huge area. See, now I'm talking too much.
No. It's great. Right. Anyone with good insight is good. I'm just you know, I'm exploring it as I usually do, like a blind man in a dark room. So.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah. What's your feel on this, Jim? I mean, was this the one you brought up, this paper, or was it you, Ida? Or
yeah, I found that paper after the first one with just that had more of the pictures. This one has a lot more information that's relevant to like the EU ideas. Actually.
Yeah. It's great. It's really great. Quatera. This a mining company, probably?
So, Robert, you live in that area. Any pieces of land that we can buy up very, very, very cheaply where
All these
where
interested
you
in
might
making
find
money.
a bunch of these pipes?
This isn't about
underneath
money.
the surface.
I'll virtue signal that one.
Right.
We can fund, we can fund our laboratory that way.
This is
You're
pure
in the mining
science.
business, right?
Okay.
Well, they know about mining. They know about
yeah. What,
stuff. Yes, Robert, or no? Is he there, Robert?
What is that?
Is
Yeah,
Robert
I'm here.
Right. You know about mining
I'm here.
something.
Yeah, you're not
A little bit.
mining
I mean,
bracket pipes.
Metallurgy. A little bit. I'm pretty much finding out more of them from you guys. Like I said, I was just my experience in geology is just what I've learned from People Dome. Outside of that, a few bits and pieces from Bruce and a few other doctors, but yeah, like I said, these tubes and these pipes I've learned most of them from you guys.
Yeah, we only have to go down 1,500 feet. Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you go through this article, if you scroll through this article, Dave,
yeah,
I think they show some kind of like satellite or air photography photos.
I saw that, right? Like,
so from a bird's view,
uh-huh.
Yeah, there, and what you can see is almost like what you call them, the second one above. There's like a electric strike pattern around that circle, and that's where the breccia pipe is. So if you look at those electric strike patterns, now mind you, this is not that big, right? So if you can find those strike patterns, you're probably, sitting on top of a breccia pipe there.
Right.
Just saying, Robert. Sponsor us. Find a few.
No, this is. One of the things that would be fun to do, perhaps fun, or perhaps arduous, but it's like, look at the just as a pattern recognition and pattern exploration process is just go on Google Maps and just go across these wonderful Lichtenberg patterns that we see, and then find candidates.
I was thinking, a pair of binoculars.
Take a magnetometer and confirm it.
Yeah.
Just a pair of binoculars and find a nice tabletop mountain there with a good view and scan around.
That's very interesting. The hermit.
Yeah, those are interesting blind pipes, so they're hidden underneath the surface. It depends on where you are, how deep they are,
What's the mobility? What's the mobility of charge in granite?
Oh,
Jim, would you?
That's where that paper, if I could find the one I sent it, but it's buried in my emails. I found one on that specifically. It was titled, I think, Electroconductivity of Sandstone and stuff, but it mentioned specifically shale of the composition there, and it was just to sum up, it's a highly conductive material, at least at the surfaces of it. So,
the variation.
There will be enough cracks.
If you're starting to look at this, you can look at it just because we've been so exposed to the fabrication process of integrated circuits, etc., the different doping levels and connectivity that they inject into them or design into them, and it would be interesting to see, just because of the layouts of these layers, is what the mobility of each of the layers would be, and then you can kind of model like its behavior that way.
Yeah, that'd be a good point. Like, to get not just, I was focused on how conductive that specific layer was, but the relative conductivity of all those layers should determine then how much restriction. Because in one of the pictures, you can actually see like a secondary a secondary pinch above the first one, and it's not quite as pronounced, but there's still like you see more uranium, and it's just a little higher up in the pipe. That might have been in the first paper, but so what you would expect is that also to be a conducting layer, and also it would have to have the right material to fuse into uranium, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely not. I don't know. I wish I knew more geology than I did all of a sudden.
Oh, there's one of the guys that Neil, I forget what his name is, but he's been on. Do you remember? He's really a character. He's been on before, but he's actually done, you know, like fairly serious mining and has all the vocabulary, etc. and the experiences, because he was sharing some of the experiences with us. He would be good to get back on. We'll see if Neil recovers from the mishaps of today. I'm sure he will. I'm sure he's fine. He sent me an email, so I'm sure he's okay. So,
well, that's good.
Part, yeah. But this is opening up this window, so more, even more. It feels like to me, this is because it makes it really, you know, this makes it, you know, all the theory that we're talking about. This gets it more into the, you know, and it's been, you know, consistently the area of our interest. So.
Nature, I always, well, not always, but I like to say at least that nature is our teacher. That's my personal motto, if you will.
Absolutely.
Now, not so much because we can take this phenomena we're seeing right here and readily use it, but we can look at the surrounding layer, right? That hermit shale. We can look at its chemical composition, which is extremely hard to find because they're already kind of, you know, sedimentary layers. So, yeah, what is it? But you find out things, and then you find out the mechanism. Now you may be able to actually come up with an experiment in the laboratory, confirming what you're seeing, leading to a new theory, if you will, right? It's kind of the pathway. And this, I believe, well, at least to my mind, is a beautiful example showing how the electric universe, right, with electric phenomena on Earth causing all kinds of catastrophic circumstances, including the minerals that we use nowadays. So the catastrophe back then is our wealth of today.
Right. Well, I'm going to make I'll make a jump that, you know, it's really interesting because, you know, my partner is really into this Bitcoin thing where they burn like so much energy. They burn so much energy mining this like artificial representation of value. You know, it's mind boggling how much they just, you know, it's just all radiative energy and just out into the, you know, what. But if you take that, you take like some portion of that and go into if you had a simulation, the ability to simulate this to the point where you could actually generate some of these transmutations, it's like you're actually creating the material that has value, you know.
Yes, so anyway, and there's a whole Russian company trying to do that, in this case by using radioactive decay, which officially is impossible, but they're doing it anyhow, at least that's the claim, by putting bacteria, iron-reducing bacteria with radioactive waste in a vessel, in a reactor vessel, and take it out after 3 months, and there's no more radioactivity, which is utterly, utterly, utterly impossible, of course, right? It takes many millions of years to complete that cycle. But they're doing it anyhow, and they're trying to make their money that way.
Wow, okay.
But, you know, I think we should be careful with seeing this as a promise for the future right now, because basically the uranium is kind of like a stored piece of energy, right? It is still a fossil fuel in that sense. Not chemically burning, but it's still a fossil fuel. So the promise is, of course, fusion.
The name implies something that we're perhaps stating that it's not.
Right. Well, the promise is fusion, but, well, physics is a little bit stubborn there.
Super interesting.
So, but how do you get the energy to create these metals and all these metals, for example? Because you would require a large amount of energy. How are you going to do that? Where do you get the energy from? I think the lesson is
grid.
humanity needs to grow up and understand that everything is finite, or we should not use it overly abundantly, right? Be wise about it.
Well, if you can repurpose, recycle like nature does. Right?
Sure. That's a sensible system.
Yeah. Because it's the cycle. I go back to the farm. Just my little dabbling as a kid with farming, but my dad was actually on a real farm growing up. But it's that process of you grow the fruit and then you build a mulch pile for the winter, and then you take all that material that's decayed and died and use that for the next season. And that's actually the which gives the nutrients to the new growth. So that's the most basic recycle.
On it a couple times.
What's that?
But don't forget to piss on that mulch pile.
Well, you need some fish and manure. Yeah, manure is good. Yeah. So it's funny because Robert, that Indiana, that whole that Pittsburgh area, so that's where it was from.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So
humanity can enrich the environment. At least that's my conviction, and I think it's definitely true.
Well, this is all we do now is just it's just rape. It seems to me.
Yes, yes, and I'm internally I'm crying whenever I see huge amounts of raw nature being destroyed for whatever
it's
purpose,
disgusting,
right?
Yeah.
Mines and all that.
Totally, but let me say this before you lynch me there.
I promise I won't.
Well, current state aside, humanity has shown many times over that we are very capable of turning basically barren pieces of land into fertile land and make it useful, including for nature to use, right, as a spin-off. What I'm saying is humanity is totally capable of not just living in harmony with nature, but boosting nature.
Mm-hmm.
We're definitely capable of that.
Right.
But instead of boosting nature, or at the very least living in harmony, we are totally raping it, right?
Right.
Sure, but
for what? It's just for because we always have this. You always have to grow. You have this imperative to grow the economy 10%. Otherwise, it's not healthy. This is poison. This is a poisonous scenario. It's poison.
Totally.
What's the motivation for that? Why is that the baseline? And that is the baseline, by the way. Yeah. And it's this is clearly running the train off the cliff, or running the jalopy off the cliff.
I agree, but the reason that I say this, or I was reminded of a couple of run-ins I had with people, talking, debating, whatever circumstances, and then sometimes people bring up that humanity is a parasite or a virus on the earth. And that is, I'm not sure about the terminology there, but it's kind of like an nihilistic point of view, or very depressing at the very least.
Right.
And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. So people tend to bring up, examples of what we're all doing wrong. But 100 years ago, that wasn't the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
And 200 years ago,
the problem is this is the problem with materialism, and this is the beautiful thing that Sheldrake has brought this up, is since we live with this philosophical materialism that once again is a tacit acceptance of a dogma, right? But we don't. It's not presented as a dogma, right? But because of that, the people who are the most materialistic rise to the top and then rule and define reality. And
sure,
no one's aware that there's a highly destructive nature to this dogma. That it's even a dogma. They don't. It's just science. Boom. This is the truth. And then they put those are the characters that support their ideas up on a pedestal, and everyone else is underneath it or scoffed at because they disagree with the deities of their reality.
Well, obviously, you pointing out common sense that I should not abuse this piece of nature hurts my wallet. So
yeah, nothing there. Yeah, no, exactly. So yet another rabbit hole to fall in, which we've fallen into before. But.
Well, in the end, I guess we all need to grow up as humanity before we reach a level that we make better choices.
Be stewards to this thing that we've
right.
come upon here that ultimately is life giving. So.
Definitely. So, linear in nature or linear low energy nuclear reactions or whatever they may be, fusion processes causing that uranium to be there. Unless, if you go back to that Breccia pipe picture, just for anybody watching or listening to this, imagine that page 20 something.
Okay.
Yeah. And just imagine, they're explaining these Breccia pipes with the uranium concentration, uranium oxide, mind you. Now, how you're going to transport all that uranium through groundwater, accumulating it over there on all those layers, exactly there, through all those pipes that are somehow, I don't know, volcanoes or something. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. Look at this picture. Water, erosion, and sedimentation, that's it. This is not true. We are living in an electric universe. We're living on an Earth that can go totally bonkers and haywire.
Right.
Let's pray it doesn't happen again, because you're confronted with the thunderbolts of the God.
Right. Well, I mean, it's
something
funny.
tells me I won't like it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the beauty of doing, like Dave Brown's experiments and everything. You just take that little thing that he's doing and then you extrapolate it and you kind of see the action.
Mm-hmm. 1,296 pipe in the Grand Canyon region. That's not even that big a piece of land over there. I think they're talking about.
Do they now? That's protected, right? Or do they mine? I'm sure the powers that be that they get a whiff of that. This is here. They want to go in.
Well, this is what this whole article is about. It's basically this article is about preparation or how they did the research of what is mineable and what not. And I think they're going to mine it, but it's like really a small piece of land. It's really not that big. And they dig up the tunnel, basically, the pipe, and then, fill it in again with the rubble, and that's it. Bye. We got uranium ore, that's it.
Right.
Yeah, actually, sorry?
Don't they find diamonds and precious metals in there, too?
I have no clue. I think it's about the uranium oxide predominantly.
That's where you start thinking about
main valuable thing here. I think.
But I mean, that place. What was that place that you brought up that was so interesting in? Oh man, was it Kazakhstan or? Let's go over there because it's good. It's good visual.
It wasn't dark
mountain.
What's that?
Wasn't it Uzbekistan?
Yeah, right. You're breaking up there a little bit, Robert. So.
I got a bad connection.
There, that's much better. It's probably close at your proximity to the mic there.
I was about to say, wasn't it in Uzbekistan?
Yeah, I think so. I've done it a couple times.
There's from the air, just about center now is that big circle, and in that center should be the darkish mountain there, which has basically one of the largest gold mines.
Is that Amanda?
Yeah, it's about there, I think. Yeah. A little bit down, maybe to the right down. So yeah, I guess this is the Big Brother variant of those Breccia pipes.
Right. Was that it?
Looks like it.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's a mine, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be the one.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, who knows how many phenomena and expressions we're looking at, or mechanisms, right?
Uh-huh.
We're just starting this.
I mean, this is how they've mined this down, right?
Right.
That's what we're seeing here. But what happened? What was the cause of this? Creation of material, and then you start seeing this stuff, right?
Well, and in our mind, that totally testifies of a huge electric phenomena.
Right. You see the splash here.
Yeah, if Andy were here, he'd be talking about the ionic winds.
Yeah. No, but
but then remember,
this is how you see these
could be pretty ancient, right?
Sure.
Who knows how long ago it was?
Right.
At least from the previous picture, we can see that it was a long time ago, at least because we have several sedimentary layers over those in the southwestern of the United States. So we're talking a huge time scale on the Earth, no matter how you put it.
Yeah. But the part of it, like kind of embracing the process, for me at least, is you take it and then you scale it, and it's like you're not that far away from it. Then
right.
It's like, imagine what this would be, and a lot of times when we see these, just because of this is the beauty of the whole thing, the scalability of this phenomena. It's like scale it down, and then there's Jim brings this up a lot. You always have that like central core filament that has the most energy, and where did that land, and where did it pass through? And it seems to me that this is where it passed through, right? This is where that central axis passed through, where the most current, that concentration of current happened. Right? But by induction, right. I'm doing it by induction. I'm not saying this is definitely what happened. I'm saying
I don't think anybody understands this thoroughly yet, mm-hmm. right? I think we're trying to go there, at least in our thinking.
Right.
I think it's a shame. It's utterly a shame that mainstream is so dogmatic. There are so many reasons everybody's trying to do the same stupid stuff.
Yeah, but you introduce this new narrative, and this is the beauty of having something that is so against the accepted narrative. It's like it's going to cause attention if you're able to hold on to the kind of consistency and coherency. And have a stiff upper lip handling the flack that's going to come once you state it, and you put your feet down. You put your heels in, and it's like, I think that's going to happen actually. So let's play a small mind game there.
Mm-hmm. Imagine.
If they're good spirited. I don't like them when they're not good spirited. But.
Imagining.
Okay.
Yeah. Just imagine. Nobody knows geology yet, and nobody was interested in this stuff anyhow. And we're here right now, today, as we all are, and we know nothing about geology. And this is the first time humankind is interested in it, and we're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Would we go to the current model, or would we totally be looking at an electric phenomena here? Everybody would be jumping on this. Nobody would care about an established dogma that it has to be a volcano because Professor such and such said this and this, or doctors yada yada mentioned something to that effect, because it's all ego in the end, right? You cannot go there because it's already been proven by Professor such.
They need this static picture where there's millions and millions of years, and then erosion and wind erosion caused all this stuff. And
that is due to a lack of explanation. But we're offering a different avenue here,
right?
That whereby these
it's a dynamic. It's a super dynamic process. Yeah.
So they should be jumping on it,
but they won't, because. But if you think about it, the model, the static nature of the model, this protection, this desire to grab onto something that's static, makes sense for anyone controlling the narrative, because it keeps their rule in position, right? Because here's the narrative, and this is highly manipulative. I would argue, it's
going to be difficult to trick 3 times. Yeah. Sorry, Robert.
Who was the gentleman who gave at the conference in 2017 about the British system, and everything had to be like clockwork and organized and proper? And I think that has a lot to do with it. I can't remember.
Wasn't
No,
Gerald Pollack? Wasn't Gerald Pollack? Maybe.
No, it was he was a really tall guy. I think he was one of the first speakers.
Oh, right,
But
right.
he talked like cricket. The one
Oh,
who
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about
He
cricket
was
going out.
kicking the English pretty hard. Yeah.
Oh, he was kicking them in the teeth. But it was like basically just like that whole British system. It has to be clockwork. It has to be organized. It has to be clean and proper. And it has, it's therefore, and then therefore after that, it can't be challenged because, well, they're British,
Yeah.
But
I would put the onus on the financial system more than them. But that's just
it's probably that now. But before it was the Royal Society. It's like we were touched by the Queen.
And who happened? What was going on there? I mean, that's the big question. This is where I think our the inquiry that's happening with our little group here kind of branches off the Thunderbolts, because instead of Stickman and Peratt and the ancient stuff, it's kind of like the interest is what happened with the Royal Society and Newton.
Well, actually, I would say this is a more practical approach right now. Because as important I think it is, all the Stickman, the plasma phenomena, Peratt, redshift, Birkeland currents, as important as that is, right? If these events were real, they left the traces on the Earth. And the Earth is like a big book that we can read. Mm-hmm. And right now we are only reading with one thing in mind. There were volcanoes and lots of erosion and plenty of time.
The static narrative. And it's there's kind of an imperative for the static narrative. Billions and billions and billions of years. It's it's all the separation from. It's so far away you can't touch it to begin with.
Well,
and you're one of the other messages is you're absolutely infinitesimal compared to these forces. And so don't even think about like questioning them, and this is extremely it's a depressing state of affairs for me personally. Not that I have an inspiration to to rule anything. It's just like what happened here? What is going on? I mean that's the thing that keeps coming up.
Personally, I'd like to go to a positive note. I really am kind of like that. Nice. What I'm saying here is. I think we as a group are, kind of on the forefront there, or at least we're trying to be, by looking at geology, bringing the relationship with the EU and plasma electric phenomena and an electric sun model and all that stuff, including fusion processes, right? Mm-hmm. I think a completely new picture emerges there, and it's a very fascinating one. I think many people can jump in on this. I think we should keep ignoring mainstream anyhow, because they don't want to talk about this because it can't be done. It's a dogmatic belief system. But the individual people will come over just because there's so much to research and so much understanding to be gained. This is a different avenue, and we're making a concrete relationship between the stuff out there, the creation, and how Earth came to be. And I think the Earth is like the Rosetta Stone, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the connection can be made. That's where it's realistic, tangible. You can do your own explorations. You can do your own thinking. You can do your own exploring. We're having beautiful tools like Google Earth. I mean, how many times are we using it? Google Earth,
Right, exactly.
It's beautiful. We can travel across the globe. This is a beautiful time to do this. And we're still stuck to the missing volcanoes, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So it bothers me to no end sometimes. But I really think the geology, EU geology, is the key thing for the future. That's where things come together. That's where we can see the expressions of these disasters, right? And learn from them.
Right.
In all kinds of ways.
I had a hell of a time getting that. It's interesting that how they change the searches on this stuff, like where it goes. No, I'm not not that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but Shiprock is particularly loud to me, right? As far as the type of an event, right? Let's see, it used to come down right on it, and I'm not sure exactly. Robert, do you know where it is from? If you were looking at this from this perspective, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, it kind of comes in, and then I don't get the map anymore.
You're the navigator.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah. I can zoom in. That's it. But the 120 degrees that shows in this thing is amazing. All right. Rattle. Oh, maybe there we go. Right. That's it. Yeah. Why not? Why not take me there? Okay. Right.
Good
I mean,
question.
that's yeah. But I mean that right? Isn't that an event?
Say again?
Isn't that an event?
Yeah, I'd say so. I've been flying over the southwest of the States a couple of times, and it's nothing but Lichtenberg patterns and how do you say that? Those fractal patterns, right? Nothing but.
Right.
But
Right.
an event can take a long time as well. Like, it's a process. Like, time doesn't exist. Like you said, it is all scale relative. So an event to us could be 100 years. I mean, an event to us couldn't be 100 years, and it seems like something, smaller. But there can be longer lasting events, like the red spot on Jupiter. That could be considered an event.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's cool how events scale like that.
Yeah. I'm just imagining this as a strike, kind of like a sudden strike, like a snake, right? But that's just me.
I see the same thing there. That definitely looked like it came from overhead, struck downward.
Yeah. I mean that thing. And then, of course, any news on Upheaval Dome, Robert?
I'm sorry?
Any news on Upheaval Dome as far as like the haps there? It seems to be it seems to become iconic for us, So
it is, but nothing new on the news side. Only thing new is I got kind of hold of Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch, who's David Moriello, and he actually did a report. I think it was 2009 on Upheaval Dome. So I sent him my literature just to see if it would help him out, and he was excited to read it, but nothing more came of that.
Mm-hmm. So the Diamond, where was that from?
Oh, that's David Moriello. He goes by Diamond in the Oppenheimer Ranch when he does like his podcasts for Little Ice Age and whatnot.
Okay.
Because I saw on Plasma Geology, there's a Facebook group there or a page there that had a report on Upheaval Dome, and I caught it. It was pretty interesting, so I just figured, here's some more info that we had, and no one really knows about it, so I sent it his way, and he's happy to read it, but I don't think it's going to constitute a whole second report or anything.
Do you know, Robert, what layer the top layer or layers around the Upheaval Dome are? What layers do they correspond to with in relation to the ones we just saw at the Grand Canyon?
The top layer of the Upheaval Dome is that red, red sandstone. I think it's the Wingate layer. Then I think further on down, I can't remember how many layers down. There's like three. Yeah, the Wingate upper layer, and then I think there's the Chinle in there, and the Morrison Formation at the bottom. I think I'm not sure about the last two, but I know the upper layer is the Wingate.
Wingate. Oh God, there are so many names for this.
Is Wingate, is that considered a material, or is it just the name of the thing?
It's that's the red sandstone layer. And then there's I think the Chinle is in there as well, and then the Morrison layer is like that gray clay at the bottom. Because that's where we actually in the Morrison layer. It's just laying around. Since it's gray and clay, and sometimes there's even a green tint to it. It's like it's the aluminum in it. But that's where we find our Nalcine rock is. It's laying in Morrison Formation. I guess that's when it was wet, is what shock pulled it. That's what.
Can you type those three names? Can you type those three names in the chat, maybe, Robert?
I'm actually on my phone. Let's see if I can do that.
Oh, right. Oh,
I think it's just WINGATE. Wingate. It's not like
Wingate. Okay. Like as far as
I think so.
like Wingate, and it's
Yeah.
and it would be considered rock, or is it?
I found the
It's just a
Morrison.
stray. Yeah, or the Morrison layer. Yeah.
Morrison layer. Huh.
You have to take
The
a
Morrison
Wingate
layer
out.
underlies the Cedar Mountain Formation, the
Morrison
Cloverleaf Formation, and the Lakota Formation. Okay.
Right.
I see you're getting it.
Take out Wingate, just leave in Morrison. And,
See, because the lawyer. Morrison Law Group.
yeah, just type in Morrison formation.
Okay. So this is what we're looking at. Huh?
And over in Denver, right by Bruce's house, right by there, because he lives right near Red Rocks. There's the Morrison Formation. There is where you find all the dinosaur bones and the fossils.
Mm-hmm.
So some shit happened during that time. Because if we're finding all the announcing there, and then that's where you also find all the dinosaur fossils. That was probably the time when things got sloshed around and moved about and zapped.
Mm-hmm.
Killing off the dinosaurs, right?
This is where that analogy with let's say photoresist on he was mentioning it too. You know that the process of etching silicon for semiconductors. It's very similar. You know.
Look at that.
What's that over here? So,
Oh, that previous picture right before you, yeah, right there. That's a lot of. Is that a expanded shot or is that zoomed in on something? I got a really small screen.
let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Exhumed river channels are saying. Isn't that the other direction?
River channels that are elevated.
That are elevated, right? They go that way. Yeah. They have to be extruded. Yeah.
I'm not so sure there. You know?
Maybe in the Bizarro world.
Well, water erosion, not being able to erode that riverbed where the water flows through. It's
Over billions.
a little bit illogical.
Yeah, always. Yeah. These are bones? Yeah.
Mental note. Gotta visit Robert someday. It must be a really interesting surrounding there, area.
I think
For exploration.
It's great.
You know, the one that just conversationally, the one that I know the geology tour that we're kind of just beginning to come into materialization here. Talking about Denver area, but there's like because we've gone into Utah and you're so knowledgeable about it, you know, and your dad too. It's like there's like a call for me. Like, what's your thought of having it like happen in Utah instead of in Denver?
Well, I said that a couple weeks ago when we were trying to plan a geology tour, like for a future conference. It's like it's got to be either in Moab or Salt Lake City, because just so we can hit Utah.
Mm-hmm. What if we? I mean, it's not. If we had a plane that flew, the charter plane that went from Denver to there, how expensive would that be?
I don't know. I've never looked into those logistics. I was just.
I mean, would it be something that we would want to entertain or not? I don't know.
Yeah, it'd probably be. If you got to get a charter plane, it depends on it, because if you get more people than you can handle, then you're gonna have to get like a small like.
Well, you do it. You do it by whatever the interest level is, of course. You have to, I mean, it's on the fly. Right. That's why you kind of build the logistics first. Anyway, this was kind of...
you don't want to schedule the conference in Salt Lake, and then you can get a few buses, and then you can hit all the sites that, because there's a few up north, and then there's all the ones down in the southern area around Moab.
But I mean, you do the plane, planes, trains, and automobiles. You do the plane to the bus, right? Anyway, I'm not thinking.
We had to do
probably over the top logistics, but. Yeah.
Right, but if you did it in Moab, because that's like a big tourist town. They have a shit ton of hotels down there, and plus they have helicopter tours because the airport's
really,
and you can see all the places. Yeah.
See, that's calling my name.
There you go. You can fly over San Rafael, could fly over Canyonlands and up People Dome, and then you could maybe fly over 9 Mile Canyon, which is up in Wellington and north of the Green River, and then you can that area is just for the petroglyphs anyway, so that wouldn't even be worth it.
Right.
You can just see where they are, and then you can dive into it. So.
Right. What would you think about this? We'll keep this off the record, but it's what would you think about having a meetup between everyone who wants to be involved, who is everyone here? I would argue, to discuss specifically what that thing would be, and all brainstorm on how to manifest it into reality.
Right. We got to figure out. Yeah, we could probably get you, me, Neil, Bruce. And from there, we probably
Heather, everyone. Yeah, I mean, everyone who wants to be involved, right? And then
everybody who wants to be involved.
Yeah, and to discuss it. Yeah. So.
I wasn't trying to be exclusive. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's I know. Yeah, it's anyway. Just to put in the air so we can start chew on it a little bit. But very cool. Very cool. I wonder what Neil we haven't heard from. I don't know if we can. We should check in on him, see if he's okay. So, anything? What else? Let's see if there was anything else that I was running across. That Ido has any more feedback from the conference in Italy?
I'm not sure what to say there. I don't know. Questions, maybe?
Yeah.
Happy to answer questions, but nothing comes to mind.
Okay. With the I did run into something that you might be, because you shared this, and it was this thing, history of condensed plasmoids. This was really interesting.
Yes, I found that particularly interesting myself as well.
Yeah.
So this is 100+ years of transmutation experiments, etc., and how people that we know by name very well, like J.J. Thomson, etc., were convinced that electricity can perform transmutations, for example, but got the advice that it was a poor career choice somehow.
Right.
This
is very interesting because ultimately these are all these things are kind of related, to me.
Right. So there are a few links here.
Stories.
In this article, there are a few links there, especially on top. And if you go to that links, you get usually a pretty short description of the experimental setup and what kind of fusion processes happened there.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one that goes into magnesium in solution, and then somehow on an iron electrode, calcium appeared. I believe it was calcium that appeared. It was a slow process. Buddy mentioned something to that effect. So it seems that fusion processes, cold fusion processes, if you will, do not have to be with a flash and a bang. It can happen actually quite gradually, it seems. So, just saying.
Like Buddy was just
water
mentioning.
can sustain a fusion process, right? That's interesting.
That's interesting right off the top.
Well, especially if you consider that the oxygen in the water is a prime candidate on the suspect list of being used in fusion processes. And magnesium plus oxygen makes calcium. Oops. It's been proven all along for a century. The problem is, and I guess this connects to the conference in Italy and everywhere else, we simply do not have a physics model that can explain this in any way, shape, or form, let alone predict it. That's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. But I mean, this is where it starts getting into the imperative to obfuscate and put mathematics on the high pedestal.
Right. How many times have we not seen on the Facebook discussion groups, and Facebook can be stolen by now by me, for me, because I don't give it much credence anymore, the whole Facebook phenomena. But how often do we see people like, you guys, you do not do math. Where is the math?
Yeah, right,
math
right, and then that's the immediate scoffing and discounting and silencing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is a valid argument that you need to be able to do the math. Sure, it's a valid argument, right? But it's not like many things, new discoveries, you don't start off with that. At least if you do, you're quantum mechanics, and then it goes wrong.
This is the one that I had never heard of this character until over the last week, but I've dove in heavily. Oh, is this Robert?
Their biggest problem.
Hang on, Robert is trying to say something. Robert, could you repeat? You broke up.
Robert, you're breaking up, unfortunately.
Try again.
I was just saying that. I'm sorry.
Go.
Yeah, I do have a poor connection.
That's better.
Yeah. I think that their biggest problem is once you throw in the electrical phenomenon into the calculus, that their math gets all screwed up, and to figure out that complex thing, it's hard to derive the.
Well, there are other actions. There are other actions happening. There are other actions happening that don't fit.
We use Maxwell's equations to start off. And
they're immensely complex and unwieldy. Just as far as how they're stated.
It's too complicated.
How they're stated, it's like, let's optimize the number of characters in the math, and then they're unwieldy just conceptually and actually to do numbers through them. It's a really, it's a tight representation symbolically. But it's not a tight representation in any applicable usage of those numbers in the way it's stated. So once again, it's like here's an iconic thing that you have to bow down to in a way, and it's what's the use of it? The one that's come on my radar recently is the inaccuracy of the current number system. One of the problems with real numbers is, which is the entire quote unquote continuum of numbers as you go, just even between 0 and 1, there's an infinite number of potential numbers, but the way we represent them is inexact. In order to get any type of exact rational number, it's an infinite. You have to do an infinite regression. And you can't, and then out of that infinite regression get the number, right? And if you look at the Babylonian, the sexagesimal system that we've kind of come across, it is exact, by the way. And it's like, and this is kind of a pretty profound revelation that everything we do is an approximation, and it's got a lot of in so laying it out this way. It's got all this slop that you wouldn't expect, but it's all over the place in it, And anyway, it's an interesting kind of, for me personally, kind of I had an idea about it, but not stated as clearly as I've heard stated recently. I thought that was interesting. So go ahead.
I had something awesome if I could share.
Yeah.
So this happened today, earlier at work. I shared the photos already on the feed here.
Okay.
if you might be able to pull those up.
Oh, let's see.
Hey, Neil.
Oh, there he is. Hey. Hey, how you feeling?
You got my email, eh?
I did. Oh
There's
my
the man.
God. Oh man, we
Still
get the
alive
picture.
there, Neil.
Worried about you.
Thank you. I don't know why I started with that, but yeah, it was. I got my free health care today, so.
There you go.
Ouch.
Now you got free healthcare and unlimited doobies.
Well, they don't give it away.
What happened?
Canada, eh?
Yeah, exactly. No, I got. I do have. They said that basically in the technical term they gave me all this really interesting words about what happened to my body, right, with like my nervous system and everything, and then I just said, so I fainted. I just fainted, right? Yeah. So that's what happened. I scared the crap out of the people at work. I didn't eat all day yesterday, really, very much, and we had a few celebratory drinks, but nothing crazy. But I did have, yeah, but not. It wasn't nothing compared.
I
to
know.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Two drinks on a real empty stomach. That'll
You see what I'm saying, exactly.
Yep.
So, but anyway, I obviously was drunk, but I woke up at 5:30, and I got a shower, everything. I felt a little queasy, but long and the short of it was I was there at work, and I was just putting some folders together. I was moving up and down, like my torso, with bending over, doing something, standing up, bending over, doing something, standing up, and I was starting to get a little queasy there. So I went to the washroom, and apparently,
That's where they found you.
Yeah, actually, yeah, exactly.
Wow, right.
But I had gotten down on. I figured I was going to be sick, right? So I got on one knee, and I was like, okay, this might happen. And then I started feeling, that feeling that comes over you when you're losing consciousness or whatever. You're, like you're getting weak and everything. And I started feeling the shakes. And I was okay. And I put my hand on the counter, got up. I noticed I was looking really, really gray, like pale gray or whatever, just like Andy did that time there, buddy, and Heather. And anyway, and then I said, oh, that's not good. And that's pretty much the last thing I remember until they were pounding on the door, screaming, are you okay? Yeah, I don't remember the intervening 10 seconds or whatever it was. But,
Wow.
so, yeah. But luckily, I didn't hit my head on anything on the way down. I smacked it off of the gyprock, but I didn't put my head through it. So I said, well, if the gyprock didn't buckle, it's fine.
Did you have like any bruises or knots?
Oh, my hip hurts, and my hip hurts, and because I think I landed on that side, that hip, and rolled onto my ass, and my elbow hurts. I think I might have hit my funny bone on the way down or something. But if that's all that happened compared to a black eye, I did fine. So
good. Nice to have you. Nice to have you back with a living here. So.
Thank you so much for your understanding. Yeah. And go on.
Perfect timing, Neil. I just had these crazy. We were just about to hop into. Okay.
Hold on. Okay, now I'm recording. So go ahead.
I've got the whole thing.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm not getting your screen. Could you reshare it?
Oh, okay, sure.
Or I steal it and then you steal it or something.
I get it. Let's see if this works.
Oh, it worked.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay.
I can see
cool.
it. Yeah,
Cool.
it's just because I joined.
We were in the middle of there was a history of condensed plasmoids. So that's where we and then Buddy was going to share something. So Buddy,
can you hit that link that belongs to J.J. Thomson a little bit up?
Yeah.
Yes. So what I missed, and obviously, just give me a copy of that there. And,
well, the answer to the universe is 42, so we dissolved that one.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
There was another movie, right? Sorry about that.
Zaphod Beeblebrox.
And
Zaphod Beeblebrox.
Zaphod.
So what it says here, was it here or in the link? Oh, here, the second bullet point was certain that electric currents in plasma could cause electric transmutation. And today, when somebody brings it up, it's treated like a novel thing, and like, of course, cussing in the church. But, it can't happen. I mean, where's the radiation that kills you? I've met quite a few people now that should be dead, by the way.
Yeah.
But they're alive and kicking,
Well,
But even J.J. Thomson, 1912, more than 100 years ago, was certain that electric currents in plasma could cause.
Right. This is the message from
and
all
that's one
over
of the
place. Right.
Yeah, this is a recurring thing. very much.
This is the
I
one,
think
and
I
actually,
should
this
go
is
further
the
than
one
that.
that kind of like. I mean, once again, there's some imperative for me to get identify the elephant in the room, and whatever. This is the calling, and it's like here's one of them for sure that enables this enables the identification of the elephant. So buddy, you were saying something. I was intrigued by where you were going.
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but but as you find it though, buddy, I wanted to say that the way that the plasmoids and pinches seem to work is that when they start twisting like their magnetic fields up as much as they do, then you start getting just like in electricity, right? Like regular electricity, that if you spin and you have a magnetic or electric current wrapped around, and you combine that together, you have an amazing amount of magnetism suddenly, which projects particles in both directions because of the gradient. So this is where you get these proton beams, electron beams. So if you can hit that level, a lightning bolt should be, or other types of plasma should, in theory, just by observation, push that envelope and make this possible. But
I wish
because we're just leaving the charge.
You witnessed the first part there, because I think you did miss a little bit of some information there, Neil. I'm not trying to be obnoxious here, but we went into a Breccia pipe. That's good to pick up on, to catch up on. About how uranium is formed through and discharged through the sedimentary layers around the Grand Canyon. And there's a lot to be learned there. We went through a whole bunch of this stuff, actually.
Well, yeah, Jim had this wonderful post or email he sent around, and exactly. I asked a question about it to him, but anyway, that doesn't matter. We'll go back to that.
Well, we're not done on that topic, actually. I think Jim tried to explain to us. Jim tried to explain to me, at least, what that crushing effect of a Z-pinch is and how it relates to the material that obviously has to be there. Now, Jim, you please cut in if I say it wrong, but that's kind of where we left off, if you will. And I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that whole thing, by the way. But there you go.
Well, I was doing the same thing when he was posting. I was like, well, this is this and this is this, but I don't care about that. Yeah, I know. We're interrupting him. I'm sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
It's okay. We're also free flowing. That it's natural for us to keep going about topics and stuff. But this ties us right into everything that we've been discussing on this. I'd call it amazing. It's been a wonderful talk. So I shared on the Skype page here. Dave, if you could go to that. All of these images here. This was at work today.
These?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, look at that. What does that look like?
I know what it is
frost?
because I'm here. Yeah.
Keep going.
It looks kind of like a comet.
Yep. If you want to keep going, go ahead and scroll through them for a minute, and we'll get our eyes used to looking at what these are. And I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Frost in your windshield?
No.
Yeah, that's my guess.
So what it is we have plastic. We covered a window in plastic, and we sanded some of the walls. After we patched, we sanded the walls. So the fine sand and debris, or the fine chalky debris, landed on the inside of the plastic. And when we touched the plastic, electrical arcs were created and created these charged, I guess you could see the charged Lichtenberg patterns on a two-dimensional surface. And they look like planetoids, dude.
It's an
event.
As you touched
it,
as you touched it, they were formed. Is that what happened?
Yeah, you touch it and it goes awesome. Because of the charge moving through it.
Wow.
And
cool.
And it looks just like comets and Earth and the moon, and we were all looking at it.
They look like it just as someone who obviously studies this kind of crap. Lichtenberg had also done negative and positive strikes. These look like positive strikes. They look like
see,
they're
that
almost
looks like a
raised up
planet with
pathways.
the Birkeland currents coming out of the North and the South Pole.
Can you give us a
You know?
scale? Like, is one of your circles
Is
on
that a-
that the
is that your
size of
finger?
a fingertip? Yeah.
That's a fingertip. Yep.
Okay, there you go. Okay, now I have a scale. Okay. Well,
And,
that's
a
cool
lot
because
of
you guys are usually people are very have a lot of electric charge, especially when they're wearing clothes in the wintertime. And that would not surprise me that you pull like it's going to pull across it and try
Dusting,
to
no?
well, the dust is going to pull and become it's dry, like we were talking about before, and it's going to be able to pull material together into pathways as the electricity tries to make it to your finger and so forth.
So
Or vice
Very
versa.
cool.
it just reminds me of pretty much everything we talk about and this episode, charge and how it can create something that looks like rivers or
This is a very
crystallization.
neat way.
I
This is a
love
very neat way
feathering.
you found there to show, or to really rapidly show the discharge patterns, if you will.
We're getting a spark when you touched it.
No,
Okay.
no. And
like-
some of them were formed from when the door opens and closes because it introduces more kinetic energy or static energy.
could you feel like a discharge in your finger when you touched it?
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
It was more. It was more like you run your hand across it, and it just kind of forms. And you open the door, and it'll form by pulling the dust from a certain point.
Right.
That is quite amazing.
I wonder how you would get that, like refine it so you could repeat it with like, household materials or whatever.
Actually, I bet you could, buddy. You have the ability to just get a capacitor, charge it up, and attach it to a plate. Put that plate and separate it with a piece of plastic, because we know that certain materials, like a Van de Graaff generator, all you need to do is like just get a piece of nylon and some cat hair or whatever, or your hair and a balloon. That type of thing will build charge, and you don't need much because the stuff is very loose, I guess, and it seems to come together real nice. I wonder if the plastic itself, because of the nature of water, and that we learned from Easy Water from Dr. Gerald Pollack, we note that plastic does not really mingle well with water. It's very high. What's that word? That means it repels water usually. So I can envision that if it has
hydrophilic and hydrophobic.
Yes, hydrophobic. Yeah, so I picture that. I picture that you're in that situation, the dust. But this is just, I would have to do more research. But you can see clearly it has the feathering, the electric feathering. That, and sometimes, by the way, to combine it, what you were saying, Edwin, and I guess you were saying it too, buddy, about the crystallization in rock. You can find rocks that look like they're feathered. Like they have crystal feathers on them and stuff like that. Very, and of course it could never be made by water because water would just break it, and that's
Well, see, the thing is, it can be created by water and by leaching and by aggregation, and electricity, because of the feathering. These dendritic patterns that are produced here, which is an aggregate, it's a diffusion limited aggregation. Because it's limited, which is what keeps it in the paths. That's why it's limited. And it's diffusion because it diffuses. And of course, it's an aggregation because we see its growth like an aggregate. But when I do it...
I was just referring to structures that were very fine that they found in caves that I think David or Wall had pointed out before. Like, look at how light and feathery this is. If you touched it, it would break. So how did it... water would have to be so incredibly still to build it if that was the case,
Right.
Anyway, go on. Sorry.
When you put charge through rock too, it creates feathery types of ephemeral like patterns, wispy, like crystallization. So I like thinking about things like David said earlier, that looks like an event. These are events. Okay. So is getting married. So is getting divorced. But events are longer and shorter and can be scaled to many different, and so is the red spot on Jupiter. That's an event, but it's a long event,
Yeah.
and it's creating and carving something. Now, this idea of events.
This is more of a recording of an event.
Yeah, a recording of an event, but it's going to change. So it's going to be, it's still happening. But yeah, that's a recording of an event. Like the Earth can be read like a book from different events that we see. It is pretty much a book that we're trying to read and trying to put together.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually.
And the whole record's there inside of the ice cores and inside of all sorts of different stuff. Look at that. That's crazy. So back to what my point is events are crystals. They are crystallization of a process that we can see as a pattern. And then science is trying to repeat the pattern. Well, science is seeing the pattern, recognizing the pattern, and hypothesizing that pattern is going to be produced next time we have that event, next time we do this event, or the event comes. I like thinking of things in accordance of events.
Yeah, there's actually,
it's a good philosophical kind of like, looking at that, and it's how we can observe things, but then you start seeing the time scales and what, if you were on a different time scale and you, say you're a little tiny like fleck of just smaller than a fleck of dust on that event that we see instantaneously could last hundreds of years, actually, if you're small enough, right? So.
Yeah, think about birth. We like to say birthday like it was a day. No, dude, that takes time to cook that baby in the oven. It's 9 months
in the kiln.
It takes time to crystallize beings, and some beings crystallize, and there's how many particles whizzing through our body constantly. I think that right there, the amount of what are they called, neutrinos, pushing through our body constantly could be the only substance that allows us to think that there's actually being to our existence. It could be the only thing. These particles that we don't think interacts with anything could be actually the only thing that is being seen as recorded by the projectors of how reality unfolds, because it's an unfolding.
You would have a great time talking with my new friend that I just found. As you guys may or may not know, I started up a Discord server for people to just for the electric view. But before we had used it to plan the first geology tour, so Mark Spann was on there and other things. But they haven't used it in a while, and Ito's been there. But anyway, long story short, I renamed it the Electric View, and I started inviting some people in, and Stacy Hepring came on it, and the God Electric, that guy who does the godelectric.org website or whatever. And I said, no, you hop on comms right now. You're going to try to convince me that what you're saying is true. Go. Like I had a great time with him.
Wow.
And
nice.
he was trying to, because he's obviously, well, I shouldn't say obvious, but, whereas I was trying to ascribe these events to mankind's adaptation to the surrounding environment, he was obviously of the opinion that there was higher life in the universe and or maybe not higher life in that sense, but also God, those type of things. And we had a lot of points of agreement though, where we were discussing things like this, what we were having here. And I think that, Buddy, you would have a great time chatting with him, I'm sure.
You know who came up today, who I thought was someone that we need to get back on, because we went kind of down into all the geology stuff, and I forget what his name is, but Neil, what was the guy's name that we talked to? That was he had been in the mining world, and then like had quite a bit of detail about discussing it. He would be, and do you remember that conversation that we had? It was a late night, and and you ran into him on one of the, I don't know if it was Facebook or not, but you've had debates with him in the past, and you guys.
Oh, Tim Butler.
Tim, yeah.
Yes,
He would be great.
He's.
I would go out of my
actually,
way at this point because of the direction things are going to get him on, actually, because he's got such a. I think he would enjoy it too. Yeah.
I also Robert, you obviously were happily exploding at some guy there who you rightfully thought was a troll, and well, he does
troll hunter.
Well, no, this is the thing that I like most about this communication, and some other person had brought it up too, is that you have the ability to take things the wrong way and much more bitterly if you're on Facebook, because you read the intention,
right?
You read the intention
into it, right? Exactly.
As opposed to express it. Like, there. You can call me whatever names that people want when I'm typing, when I'm talking something scientific or whatever, because you only gauge by that one paragraph. But you can hear in my voice that as much as I might talk crazy talk sometimes, I'm generally wanting to help people and very genuine person. I want to. You can tell where my direction is.
Right.
I'm not trying to hide it.
Right.
I can play that game, and I love being Machiavellian. Don't get me wrong. That's a great place to practice your brain, but you can't do it in real life. You can do it in Eve. Me and Ito do that. We're like, yeah, let's screw over that corporation, steal everything they have, and kill their leaders.
Yeah.
But
but you could hear if someone's playing with something versus really, really serious about it.
Yeah, unless you live in the land of deception over there, which I'm sure
I certainly do. Yeah. This is why where my reactivity lies.
And I appreciate that point of view as well, because if it wasn't for your, I won't want to say intercity point of view, but your let's just say top of the corporate culture area, that part of the universe only exists in certain cities, right? I mean, we all see little fingers of it reach in, like Walmart reaches over here, and banks reach over there.
Right.
But each place has its own character.
But it's
challenged by that.
Yeah, but it's the industry here, which is an industry town. Ultimately,
of course,
it's like it's pervasive. It's ubiquitous where it goes throughout the world. What they produce here, but you look at it and it feels like a steel mill.
I suggested to Robert, and yes, I understand what you're saying, but I suggested to Robert to please feel like perhaps maybe we should invite him on. He doesn't believe that he thinks that we're I don't want to say full of shit.
Yeah.
But
no, pretty much that out.
But it makes great listening ultimately.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. If you have a bunch of yes men, that's one thing. We're at the point now that I think our points of view are verbally honed, and I know that some of the
they're going to get better. They'll get better. It just keeps improving. This is the beauty of it, So
exactly. So I feel a hostile guest, so to speak,
would be great.
Would be fine.
Yeah. There's a name for that. They're popular on YouTube. You've seen them. I'll come up with a name, but it's funny. What the name is for it.
Well, yeah, but we're not. But the thing is that all that trolling goes away. I mean, me and Tim will laugh out loud at you and then say that you're stupid on Facebook, because this is where we start off with that animosity. But I recognized immediately that me and Tim were actually on another group somewhere, and we were arguing different points, and we just stopped for a second. I said, actually, I like your point of view and the way that you debate. He goes, I like your point of view and the way that you debate.
Yeah.
And then we became friends. And I'm fine with that, because obviously you don't have to believe what I believe to be my friend. I mean, I try very hard not to believe something. So chances are if you have even a few beliefs, you're going to be different than me. But and I have probably hidden biases and beliefs that I try to identify all the time. So, we can't even know we can't even say what we are. We're an experience to each other.
Right.
But bringing someone into the fold, not to the fold per se, but in here without actually bashing them, because I want this to be polite, obviously. If it does get beyond heated and becomes an actual shouting match or something, well, we simply won't broadcast that. And I don't really feel that we'll try them out on like Discord, bring them over there, shoot the shit, or Skype, an individual Skype call, just touching base.
Yeah.
be great. And then,
Sorry, David, is there any way you could play that plasmoid video that you played earlier? I wasn't able to see it because I was working.
Yeah.
I saw them disseminate out into different directions, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah,
dude, they're so cute. Is that real?
Krypton in a vacuum tube. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Don't bring Superman near that.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having fun with that name. I don't know why they chose it. Kryptonite. But anyway,
cryptocurrency. Yeah.
But why don't you guys, since we're talking about plasmoids again, why don't you guys bring me up to speed on some of the stuff that you've discovered in your conversions, or your about plasma and converting elements and stuff.
What the heck? Can you explain to me what's happening?
I can.
Someone, please, because I don't get it.
So before we just enjoy the view there, just a moment, if you will. I like it too, and then Neil can explain what the bleep is going on there. But yeah, what we learned today, Neil, and I'd like to hear your opinion there, is what Jim put us onto is pointing out to me that you need material to create a Z-pinch, or rather, a Z-pinch is created there on the place, according to what Jim said, by piercing through a double layer, and there needs to be atoms there in order to interact, and that interaction would create the Z-pinch. At least that's my summary of it. So it's not a magnetic phenomena that starts squeezing in on itself through the magnetic rings around the Birkeland current, if you will, but there's interaction with material that makes it happen.
Jim?
So this is a Birkeland current, and the particles are being separated through charge separation?
Well, we could, there's harmonic, there's all kinds of ways of looking at it, but certainly there's very interesting, there's interesting symmetries. It's super animated, and they look like little tadpoles or something floating around.
Oh, are you talking about the video or Z-pinch?
The video.
Okay. Because I'm still on the Z-pinch.
Well, we have two topics there. Neil, and in the meantime, we were touching upon this, so there you go.
Well, I can explain. Well, first thing, let me just explain what you're seeing so that you can get it. So there's an anode and a cathode in there, and I believe in this particular case, just from what I'm seeing, I believe this is no different than the cathode rays being shot to a CRT tube. But it's down at that end, the pointy end where it's down there, and the other end is where it would normally go if you left it alone. But what's happening is that each of those, something in the gas is obviously creating some sort of magnetic field, or otherwise making these point charges. And these point charges are self-organizing. They point themselves at the points where they want. They're trying to get out through the glass because there's just as much. There's enough.
But what causes these point charges instead of the normal, for me, normal plasma phenomena?
Believe it or not, those would be generally what we're talking about right now is general plasmoids. Something that are self-made magnetic entities that only last while there's power.
Little toroids.
Well,
perhaps
if you have a sphere, for example, a Van de Graaff
plasmoids, right?
Well, it's really what it's called is generally called anode tufting. But we normally see it, like, for example, on the outside of the sun, all of those little tornadoes are just anode tufts. If you watch the Sapphire program or Sapphire project, you can see that there will be little tufts that will form. And the higher you jump the current, the more of these tufts you'll get. And they will separate themselves from each other and not mingle. And that's the sun is just coated in it.
The anode is on the outside, the glass?
That's what my thoughts are. Yes, the anode is on the outside of the glass, so the anode tufts are forming on the inside of the glass. But the cathode is the end at that point. Now, every time he touches his finger, there's more current. Now, it's not really going through. It doesn't. I mean, what's really happening is that the glass becomes a capacitive layer. And so your finger on the other side is able to slightly bleed off some charge through that, but it's not a lot of it's coming through because capacitance will generally stop DC. And assuming that this is a cathode anode situation, it's DC. So now it's trying to get out through to ground out and to allow the current to go through it. And it's looking for weak points. And every time he puts his finger down, that's what he's doing. More or less. And you can see how it occupies all the space available to it if it can. Like the whole, it's coming in one end, the glass end to the right, and it's just expanding and trying to find a way out through that glass.
It's like he implements I'm not even sure if that can be, Neil. I'm not an electric engineer, but it's like he has a magnet on top there.
He's playing with up here.
He could be focusing with a magnet, but usually that will make a beam, basically.
Right.
So I can't argue, but you see, normally it will try to go through the bottom of the glass, because that's closest to ground, basically. But every time you bring something near it, that's what he's doing.
How does he create so many of those tufts?
Because the tufts are it's literally called anotufting. The reason that it sparks up at the bottom as well as when he touches it is because there's more current allowed to go through. Because remember, what controls current is not just the voltage is not just the voltage, but it's how resistive things are. So if there is resistance, he could have all the potential there, and it won't do anything. And this is the principle that allows you to have, for example, the ionosphere. It's trying to bleed through this, and it's trying to get to ground, but it takes all this time to do it, as it has to physically move things around. In this case, each of those particles are basically examples of it going, I found a weak spot, and it's trying to ground out through there.
It's really interesting.
Oh, it's lovely. But this is the kind of stuff. But how it relates to what you were talking about, this is my issue. Have you seen Eric Lerner's new video? And he released a new video for his dense plasma focus device. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, yeah.
Go look for Eric Lerner. It's called DF focus, deep plasma focus, DPF. Demonstration or animation or something. DPF, dense plasma focus. Yeah. Just type, maybe plasma focus at the end. Yeah. He's getting there, but yeah. It's my focus. All right. There's a new one. There we go. Yeah, that one.
Is it top?
I think how new is that? Should it be? No, that's from Google Talks. Yeah, that's a while ago. All right, there's the one I saw before, but those blue ones at the bottom, those are a few years ago still. Okay. But there's a newer one that he put out, and it was quite good. And go to one of those, and maybe we'll lead you to that one.
Let's see, right here.
But he's basically showing what happens when you make a dense plasmoid pinch. And we got to understand that there's different terms. The pinch itself, which you can make with just one turn secondary, and just, you can make punch. Yeah, the focus fusing the next step. Is that it? Okay. Well, it wouldn't be a whole production. It would be just the video itself. It's only about a minute or two long. It was like an advertisement, but try one of the blue ones there that we were looking at. Maybe, because at least you'll see what I'm talking about. But he put one out just like a year ago. It was quite good.
Not seeing it.
Oh, that's okay. Just go to, I don't know why it's not there. Yeah.
One of these.
Yeah, one of those. Okay. Let's try that one. But yeah, he's showing how he just generally works.
Right.
And you begin to get an idea of what the difference is between a plasmoid, which is like those anode tufts are technically plasmoids. There's a plasmoid just on the dark side of the Earth, for example, in the night sky. It's not glowing, but it's there. And of course, there's a pinch which you could make, but only at the center of galaxies, it seems, do we get actual this event, which is a dense plasma focus to the point where the plasmoid itself is pinching. And Jim's right, because of Markland convection, you're going to be pulling material into this. Any sort of scant material is going to be migrated to the middle of this thing. Yeah, it's going to pull it all in.
See, that's and you're going to see that's our sun-luminescence.
And this, right? And watch what happens. See?
Yeah. See, right.
Very, and now cool. It's going to form a donut. And now that thing's a particle accelerator, but it's just held there.
Is that like a Dunkin' Donut?
Well, the toroid, and you see it will shoot in both directions, and that's where we get radio lobes from on galaxies.
This is where you start talking super.
And this is where fusion
start talking
happens.
Superluminal, actually.
But this is the old video. Like I said, I'll try to find the new copy and throw it in the link.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that the process that actually happens?
Yes, more or less.
Okay, and they shoot the toroid. And at the end, there's a particle that explodes. What's going on with that? They have a toroid, and then it just goes to the next frame.
Okay, right here.
That.
Yeah, and then does it shoot?
Yes.
And then they show an atom blowing up or something.
This is why we're seeing. This is why we're seeing jets out the top of black holes.
Quote, unquote.
This is why. Yes, I used air quotes here, but you didn't see it. But I'm sure you heard them. You heard my air quotes.
I'll fill in your air quotes.
Thank you. But yeah, that's what I think is what we're seeing. This, and it's doing this because at the center of the galaxy, you literally have all of this, the magnetic strength of the arm, of the arm of the galaxy. And if you think about this thing as also having rings, the galaxy itself, and there are lines of current going around, then you are making, by definition, you're making something that's going at the center of this thing is just going to be filled with magnetic energy.
Right.
And it's going to be trying to pinch itself down and down and down and down and down. And it can't. It's going to start doing this. And then once it gets to that point,
this is this theme
you get the black holes.
This is this theme that keeps coming up because it's like, I remember as a kid, because I was like, I always had those little balsa wood rubber band airplanes that you wind up and stuff. And when you wind them, you get the different levels of knots, etc. And eventually, because as a kid, you got to extend it to the point where it's just ridiculous. You start getting this behavior, and it ultimately, if you wind it tight enough, you break the rubber band ultimately. But in this case, it's certainly analogous, So.
Well, yes, and the cool thing that's different between rubber is that this won't break.
Right. Well, it'll just
The only way it's going to break is if the power stops.
But it's energy. It's energy once again, though.
Yeah, and it's in a magnetically confined area. Now, once it happens, those beams are going to happen, and those are radiation beams. They're EM radiation basically, and not charged particles moving. Which is
it's like you have this big buildup of potential energy, and all of a sudden it becomes kinetic. Right?
Well, it has
to kind of wind. It's like a winding.
But the idea of melding things together, I think that these things happen readily in lightning bolts. Even you see sometimes there's little plasmoids get formed, and the amount of current that happens so quickly. And of course there's air there, and of course if it can, you're going to get like little ball lightnings running around. If you play with enough electricity and electric sparks, you see this kind of stuff happen, like in the small frame. And when you to think that little sprites would not happen and dance across the ground after a lightning strike now seems absurd not to think that. Why would it not?
It doesn't do it now though.
Well, it does. You get ball lightning occasionally.
Oh, I thought you said when a lightning hits the ground, you get little sprites and stuff that dance across the ground.
We used to. There's if you go to probably that Oralinda book, but the Scandinavian countries were the last countries to fall to Christianity right up until the 1500s and stuff. They were held on. Now, one of the things that's good about that is the stories that they could tell about things like it is well known. If you want to kill a will-o-wisp, you use cold iron weapons. Now, isn't that the most fucked up information you could possibly get. Like Hollywood is a very dry wood. Good for a mage to use, because if you're poking around with electricity, use dry wood so it won't conduct and you won't fucking die. You know, these type of things that seem to be what I'm imagining here, what they were doing. And I have to admit that this is just supposition based on what I'm seeing. But when you think about it from that point of view and move forward,
if they had the ability to play with plasma because it was just in the air, you know, more than we see now.
Yeah, and they could learn what to make. And of course, they obviously could play
conjure,
and how to breathe.
Well, electric, like use
how to
certain
break
crystals.
it. Yeah.
If you had a bunch of Baghdad batteries that only were at 2.5 volts, okay, even today, and then you hook that up to a crystal, that crystal will vibrate if it has a current going through it, and it will make certain frequencies. Then you just put that against a brick wall or something. Now the whole wall's vibrating. You could do that with just a bunch of batteries, some friggin' juice, and a crystal. You know, so if they would do open
and
up,
they
and
can
if
control
you
the frequency ultimately,
obviously just by changing the crystal, finding different types of materials and so forth, bounding it differently.
So once you change the frequency,
you're seeing what I'm saying.
You can do some stuff.
Suddenly you have radio, actually, just instantly.
Yeah, a musical instrument.
Yeah, crazy, yes. Yeah. So I don't know any of this is true, but if you lived in a world like that and you wanted to quote unquote study the divine, I mean, we know they had engineers. They built a goddamn pyramid. So you don't do that without like city planners and stuff like that. So you have an engineering squad somewhere in.
But this
society.
is where this is once again this like city planners, etc. That we're gonna these people were certainly considered those creators. That's where there was
in a world of farmers, yes.
Yeah, but there's a certain level of what's the right word for it. I can't find it.
But also
deification to use
of course,
one that's really common.
Considering they are the guys that studied this amazing stuff that was considered divine, energy.
Right.
Of course they're going to be considered like. I mean, although I think that ritualistic symbolism might be more something also that happened. I don't know if it happened afterwards. Like, we don't consider it magic today, us playing with these forces. So, was there original society, the original people who built some great monuments and so forth and had ancient cultures, were they just as banal about it? Or did they consider it, I
would say no. I mean, if you generalize over the, I would say we're the least of that.
That would be my thing, but we also live after the time of catastrophes, which made the people coming before us scream in holy terror throughout the centuries.
Okay,
so,
but
I don't know.
But we also follow some of the same ritualistic patterns even up to today through certain religions. There's things that people do. And why do we do these things? And where did they originate from? And were they at one point actually effective? And that's why we repeat them. And now we've just turned them into, say, like a symbolic ritual, when at one point those types of motions
actually had a physical ramification. You're breaking up a little bit.
Chants, rituals.
Right. Yeah, the
burning
power
of certain incense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To build it, right. To build the resonance. Yeah, you're cutting in and out, so I'm kind of. I'll try to fill in the spaces a little bit, but so please excuse me if I'm going the wrong direction. Yeah, definitely. I mean that whole the act of the ritual, and then what ends up getting kind of talking about the manifested can be really profound, but it's this is where this alchemy issue is very interesting, because you're breaking. One of the things that empirical science has shown, and that's been in our face, since this whole, situation with Schrodinger's cat, is that empirical observations cannot be absolutely relied on. This is where empiricism breaks down. They placed it as a law, but empiricism has not gone away. But this one of the things it points to is more the observer than the experiment itself. And it's this line between the observer and the experimenter that's pretty strongly embedded in our understanding of what, the external world is versus the internal world.
It is in that ambiguity that people like Sheldrake and others exist.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why we can't, because I can know certain things with replicatable certainties, but when you start digging deep into that, you're right. You end up in a situation where you're just no longer certain.
Yeah. I mean, and then it depends on initial conditions and everything. I mean, we kind of put our foot. It's this empiricism that if you set up the initial conditions, if you make a statement, if you set up the initial conditions, it can be repeated. So this gives you power in today's world, that kind of thing. But it discount. It's kind of like so you can isolate something and make it happen again through the isolation of the thing,
Well, I think
where it discounts this entire. If you look at the entire thing, and if you remove the need to be able to predict things, all of a sudden it opens up into a much wider universe.